All right, here we go. Hello, Gene. Are you there? Gene, can you hear me? And are you there? Hello, everybody. And there she is, Gene
Hello
Clinton. Hi,
there. Can
hey,
you hear me? It sounds like a song.
yeah, yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Awesome. We have people showing up here. It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Um, we got Vanessa already in the chat saying good morning, and yeah, we got people saying hello. One of the things we love at Brivia is the chat. So let us know where you're chiming in from. We also people saying good morning. One of the my favorite things, Gene, and you're on with Tim in June. Tim Pitchell, PhD, research psychologist and good friend. So we're going to jump into this. Thanks for being here, everybody. We had 370 people register for this webinar. I know a lot of people are looking forward to the recordings. So jump in, say hello to your friends in the chat. We're going to get started right away. I got Gene's bio here because I'm going to read it today just because I want to get it right. And it's the one thing that, I'm going to follow in terms of a script. So, Gene, we're going to introduce you right away. People are, if you want to read the chat, I'm not sure. You're not as keen as I am, but let's jump into what we're talking about today. We're here with my good friend and esteemed colleague, Dr. Jean Clinton, aka Jean, as she would prefer to be called. And I see we have people from all over Canada and different parts of the world. What we're going to do today is we are going to have a conversation. We're talking about the core essentials today, what they are, why they're so important. Now, the core essentials are three parts of a 14-part model of human betterment called the core algorithm, which we'll be sharing in. Well, you can learn more about that at the end of the webinar. It's the book that I wrote that's coming out. I want to share some of Gene's work as well. And while that may sound complex, a core algorithm, you already know the core essentials. You're already very familiar with them. And what we want to do today is get as clear as possible, simplify it, and make it relatable so that you can improve your life and the lives of the people you care about. So today's session will be recorded. That's super important so that you will have access. You'll be sent the recording after the webinar is done sometime either this week or early next week. So just to let you know, it is being recorded. So if you're going to participate. So what can you expect today? I'm going to introduce Gene. We're going to jump into a quick reflection. We are going to talk about the core essentials, what they are, why they're so important, and how come they're so important to not only our survival but our thrival. Yeah, I'm going to use that word, Gene. More
I love
importantly,
it.
Gene and I are going to discuss what the core essentials are and how they can improve our overall well-being and resilience. And then we're going to get into some practical strategies towards the end. Then we're going to have some closing remarks. Gene, I'm going to introduce you. I want to read your bio here because it's always so important to get to that stuff. Gene, why don't before I read your bio, why don't you say hello? Tell us where you're at today and tell us what you're looking forward to in our time together.
Well, I'm here in Hamilton on the lands of the Haudenosaunee and Ashkenazi, who are a part of the two wampum treaty. And what I'm hoping for today, one, is to just have a really exciting conversation with my heart friend, my brother from another mother.
All
Um,
right.
but
I hope
for
that's me.
that's you. That's to really for us to explore in these times of lots of stuff going on.
Yeah,
Crisisitis we've
right.
got. What
Crisisitis.
we can do as we think about the core essentials, like how do we help people and ourselves get back to the why rather than be lost and mired in the what and the how. That's
Yeah.
what I'm hoping for people, but I'm also
Awesome.
for a very entertaining hour with
Yeah, I know you have some
love
friends
each
here. We've got
other.
tons of people. We got tons of people from Brivia partners and friends from across Canada and around the world. I see people from Sudbury and Calgary and High River, so the Southern Chiefs, the organization in Winnipeg. Hello to everybody. So I want to read your bio because not everybody knows Eugene and knows your work, and I want everybody to know. And I'm gonna. This is the only thing I'm going to read today, everybody. It's Dr. Jean Clinton is a clinical professor, Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Neurosciences at McMaster Division of Child Psychiatry. She is on staff at McMaster Children's Hospital with cross appointments in pediatrics and family medicine, an associate in the Department of Child Psychiatry, University of Toronto, and Sick Kids Hospital. Love Sick Kids. She is a fellow of the Child Trauma Academy as well as 0 to 3 Academy, fellow since 2013. She has been a consultant to children and youth mental health programs, child welfare, and primary care for over 30 years. Dr. Jean Clinton was appointed as an educator advisor to the Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Education 2014 to 2018. Here's my favorite part. Jean believes that all children are our children. And we share that. And she's a knowledge translator, strives to learn about knowledge. Her knowledge is insane how much knowledge she has, and practice approaches from all disciplines to be the most helpful. She wants to be the most helpful for the children and all the youth that we support and she supports. She is renowned nationally and internationally. So we are so blessed to have you here today, Jean, with us. As an advocate for children's issues, she is the author of the highly acclaimed and best-selling book, Love Builds Brains. And I'm going to let people know where they can find that book, Jean. And I'm just Steve de Groot. Compared to that, I'm just Steve. I'm here, co-founder of Brivia, a recovering academic, and a bunch of other stuff. And we're going to share today three parts of the core algorithm today, called the Core Essentials. So we're going to jump into it. And as a matter of fact, I am going
Steve,
to
hang on just one sec. Hang on just one.
Yeah.
You did not do yourself justice there, my friend.
Oh, come on.
So, of all of the people that I know who has a profound knowledge of many of the frameworks that we think of in terms of human development and psychology, Steve is a brilliant master of being able to distill it down to, you've heard it's 14, we're going to talk about 3, but he's brilliant in being able to do that. How his brain, I'd be afraid. I think he would blow the imaging machines if we ever tried to scan him. But he is a marvel,
Thank
as
you,
you
Jean.
as you're going to see.
Yeah, I didn't ask you to say that, so thank
I
you. My
know.
mom would be very proud. I know my dad's on the line. Hi, Dad. My dad's here. So everybody, great chat. Keep going. One of the things Jean and I heard last time when we did it with our friend Tim Pitchell, is that people didn't like us being small in the screen. So today we're actually going to have a conversation, Jean and I, about the parts of the algorithm. But you also get to be involved. Everyone here, we're going to do a reflection. So everybody, I want you all to reflect. Everybody here, thanks for being here. I want you to reflect. I want you to think about places and spaces you go to that you love the best, like places where you love to be. It could be a space. You could be there with other people at work. It could be in life somewhere. It could be on your own, but it could be with a group of people. So I want you to think about the greatest place or space you love to spend the most time in. Most people know me. I'm a recovering academic in human behavior theory, which means I like you to be the research. You don't need 9 out of 10 people to tell you what your experience is, right? And so I want you to go to that great space and place. So where do you go? And I want you can put it in the chat. I see people are already putting things in the chat. Where is that space? But more importantly, I want you to think about the things that make that place and space so great. Like when you go to that, I see outdoors, I see home and country, I see people say in with nature, right? At the lake. Awesome. There's awesome, really, really things coming in here. Jean, where did you go? Where did you go?
Steve, you know me. I went to my children's living room with my grandchildren on my knee and beside me,
Yeah,
reading to them and seeing their eyes light up and my eyes
yeah.
light up for them because I'm Nana. I'm Nana to them. So no surprise
Oh,
there. No
no
surprise.
surprises. Okay, well, stay with your reflection because I see people at garden with people, camping, being with friends and family. What's really cool in the bath, quiet reflection. I love it. So there's so many different places. For me, it's this. Like one of my greatest spaces is being with people, and we presented all last week across Canada with some great. It's really being with people that want to learn, that are open to being better. I'm just obsessed with that, and I love being with those people. And what's really neat is I ask people is what makes that time so great for you, Gene? What is it? being with your family, being with your children. I want people to think about what are the ingredients of the qualities that make those times. I see a lot of with family, a lot of with friends in here. But Jean, what are the things that make those moments so great for you?
Well, it's hard to separate from the essentials, but um, um, the kids in my family mean so much to me, and we're so connected in a way that is in a way that's different. There's an acceptance of me,
Yeah,
all the warts and the bumps,
yeah,
and Nana just breaking into song. But
yeah,
there's an acceptance, and there is a huge connection. Even if I
yeah,
don't see my grandchildren for very long or my children because
yeah,
of the distance,
yeah,
connection is key. A
yeah,
sense of I have something to contribute to
yeah, yeah,
them, with
yeah,
my love and with what we do, and the joyous reflecting back that I receive.
yeah.
It
Okay,
all belongs
awesome.
to me.
Awesome. So we're going to go small in the screen for a second because I see a lot in the chat. It's amazing. So keep putting in there. Have your conversations. And I wanted to let people know we forgot to put it on the poster, but we're here till 1:30 Eastern time, so that for people who know when we're going to have a hard stop, it's at 1:30 Eastern today. But I wanted to share the core essentials, Gene, because what we're here to do is talking about the core of the algorithm, the heart of the algorithm. And these are the three things that human beings need. And they're not just needs, actually, they're ontological human requirements. And the first one is connection. This really is about that sense of belonging. This is really about feeling that you have some sort of importance to yourself, to the people around you, to the places that you're in. Connection is also about that sense of self worth. So I want people to think about those places and spaces. And no doubt we can already see it that people are feeling that strong sense of connection. And Gene, you've already talked about it. You could hardly describe that experience without using the word connection, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
connection is the first core essential. Now, this is just a perspective, people. Gene and I get very passionate about it. It's from my work, from my research, from the book that's coming out. The second core essential is clarity. Now, what is clarity? Well, clarity is about like having goals or purpose, having some sort of like the sense that you've got clear direction, right? This is really about knowing. It could be about identity, knowing who you are, where you fit in. And it can also be about roles, responsibilities, and expectations. Now, what's really important about the clarity, now remember, this is core essentials, what humans need. And I'm going to ask you, Gene, to chime in on this, is the importance of structure, routine, anticipation, and more importantly, predictability. So,
Hmm.
Gene, tell me about, does clarity show up in your greatest spaces or places to some degree?
Oh,
I know connection is there for sure.
connection is there for sure, and clarity is there. Absolutely. So, just what you were last saying there, Steve, our brains are predicting machines. They
Right,
want, they love to have predictable experiences. They
right,
search the environment to see how am I going to get that. And
right.
so when you have clarity, it means that your brain is making sense of what's going on. So
Yeah,
this idea that ambiguity or the lack of clarity creates it sends our stress system onto high alert. Um,
yeah.
we don't like it. And so let me give you an example of clarity. I have a beautiful little a canoe paddle from northern Vancouver Island. And the kids bring it to me every time they're here in our house, and I pretend I'm playing a guitar and singing a song that I
Right,
sang when I was six
right.
years old.
Yeah, yeah,
Sugar in the morning, sugar in the evening,
yeah.
at supper time. So there's
Awesome.
clarity in them knowing what to expect from Nana, what to
Yeah,
expect from Papa, and
right.
I want to make it that granular, but at the
Yeah,
base level, it really is about how the brain operates when we do
yeah.
have clarity in the absence of.
Well, yeah, and I love what you're saying, and everybody here can connect to that to some degree. So clarity is the second core requirement that human beings that we require. It's essential. So this isn't a nice to have. This is necessary. And Gene's already alluding to the brain. we're going to have some little mic drop moments around how profound these three things are. And thanks for sharing. So clarity is really about routine. Like people put things in the chat there. It's about structure. It's about those goals. It's about knowing what to expect and having that predictability. Some people's great spaces and places, they may not include other people. So the connection isn't there maybe, but the clarity is, right? And we're going to talk about the impact of not having those. So what's the third core essential? And then I'm going to come back to the bigger screen so Gina and I can have a conversation. It's control. Now, there's some people when I say control is a core essential, people like, I don't need control. And it's interesting because it's funny how fast they say that, right? You don't need to have control, but you need to clarify that. So control, let's get this straight. What is control? Control is about a personal sense of agency. And what that means is that you have a sense that you can influence the environment or influence people within the environment. I see in the chat, people love control, right? And control shows up in different ways, right? And the interesting thing about control, that the personal sense of agency, and if you don't like the word control, we can flip it with the word confidence. But the truth is, when we have connection, we have comfort. When we have clarity, we have an assurance and confidence. When we have them together, and for humans, often it is our connections and our sense of clarity that gives us that sense of control. Not always, but that's what regulates us, stabilizes. Jean, what do you think of that
For
third core
sure.
essential, and how does that show up for you?
Yeah, well, do you know, I think, Steve, one of the things is that there's a difference between being in control and controlling.
Right.
And people hear control, they often jump to controlling the other. But as
Right.
you're underlying so clearly that it's about being in control, having
Yeah.
agency. And
Yeah.
when you have agency, you know, we've got I'm a child psychiatrist, so I know the research on kids. We have so much research that shows when students have voice and have
Yeah.
con you know have a say, have
Yeah.
agency, have
Yeah.
connection, clarity, and control, they thrive.
Yeah. They thrive. Absolutely,
Absolutely.
Gene. Like, I mean, they thrive. And this is it. People, we're not going to get into the dip. We are going to talk about the truth about humans and actually the title, which is what's really hurting us. But don't worry, we're going to get to the dip in just a minute. You probably know what that is as well. But you're absolutely right. It's about being in control. It's that feeling of influence, not manipulation, not controlling. And sometimes we find it. And what's really interesting about this is what you just nailed it, Gene. And for parents out there, teachers, coaches, and leaders, which Brivia works with thousands of leaders every year, this is really important because knowing that this is what our people need to do well, to feel well, to perform, to function optimally. Because see, these essentials give us three important messages. One, what's really important is I'm okay here, right? Or I'm going to be okay here. The other message that we get is we're okay, right? I'm okay, we're okay. And the third message is it's okay, or it's going to be okay. And everyone here knows as a human, when you feel that and you believe that, you get regulated and you get grounded. Now, Gene, what's really interesting is not everybody connects to clarity or connection in the same way, right? So different people require different requirements at different times. So sometimes it's really neat because while connection, clarity, and control are important to all of us, I already know that there are people here that are more clarity type people, right? They're like they
Yep.
connect, they love their structure routine. Other people are connection. Where would you say you are? And I'd love to see people put it in the chat. Are you a relationship person or a rules person? Are you a person or predictability person? So let's see it in the chat. What do people already know what they connect to that gives them a sense of confidence or assurance? Gene, what about you? Where would you kind of fall to today? Because it
Oh
could
my,
change.
you know that Steve, you know me so well. And my book is called Love Builds Brains. It's all about relationship.
Yeah, yeah,
It's all
yeah,
about connection. And the idea that that when you have connection, you can deal with ambiguity.
yeah.
You can trust in your gut, the oxytocin that's released with your
Oh
connection
yeah, yeah,
um, can help you deal with
yeah,
ambiguity in another
yeah,
way. And I
yeah.
love to be in
Yeah,
control.
yeah.
I don't like control. I don't like controlling, even with five
Right.
kids and nine grandchildren.
Yeah,
It's about that sense of agency that is
yeah.
that's so important. And again, from the brain perspective, the
Oh
idea
yeah,
of being in control takes you up into your prefrontal cortex rather than
yeah, Yeah.
rather than stuck in your emotional brain in the amygdala and the fight, flight, freeze thing.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so it's
I love
such
it.
such a beautiful part of the algorithm. It's really
Yeah.
terrific.
It is, and thank you for your work to validate it. And by the way, we've got one of our core council members, our in-house priest and our in-house quantum physicist is also here, Chris Pugh. So Chris, sorry for calling you out, but he's here. And Gene mentions this algorithm, and it's a model of human betterment that I've been working on for about 30 years. And Gene is part of an amazing group of people who've helped me validate it and affirm that it is applicable. And you can already connect to this. And I'm a connection person, Gene. You know that. You could ask me to come to Hamilton, and I wouldn't even ask you why. And I could probably be there for a couple of months before I say, "What are we really doing?"
Yeah.
I'm hungry. Is there something to eat? And however, at different times we need different things. And one of my favorite things, and this is a test, everybody. I'm just looking for my notes here. Um, one of the ways that connection and clarity show up really fast in our relationships is if you ask somebody to do something for you. Now, it's really neat. Yeah, I do this just for fun. If you ask somebody that you don't know really well, so connection is low, right? And you say, "Could you do something for me?" or "Please do something for," and almost inevitably they say, "Well, that depends," or "It depends," is the standard response. What does it depend on? Well, when connection is low, clarity needs to be high, right? If I don't like Gene, if you ask me, "Steve, could you help me with this?" I like I said, I'd be there. But see, if we don't have connection, then we need to know, well, what am I doing? Where am I going? How long am I like is this am
Wow.
I going to be okay? Right?
Interesting.
When
Yeah, really, it's true.
yeah, so what people can connect to here is when connection is low, we need clarity. And when clarity is high, we may need less connection, right? But those things give us a sense of control. When our relationships are strong, we may need less clarity, right? Depending on if you're more of a rules person or a relationship person. But this is interesting because let's get into. I'm gonna stop sharing the screen and keep the chat going, everybody. This is phenomenal, and thanks for joining us. I want to talk about what makes the core essentials so essential, Gene. And they're in a certain order for a reason. One of the reasons why they're in that order is connection is first. And you talked a little bit about the brain, and that's your wheelhouse. So I want you to. We're going to get into that a little bit more. But connection is our key to survival.
Yeah.
Um, when we watch people coming together, like everyone here, when you're at a restaurant or a sporting event or where people come together, you see them touch. Invariably, people shake hands, they hug, they high five. There's some sort of touch. And we are social creatures. And Gene, you know a lot about this, right? We are wired to connect. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts to say on this idea that we're social creatures and that connection is absolutely critical.
Sure, absolutely, Steve. So our brain is a social organ. It's an environmental organ. You know, it gets built and changed by the experiences that you have. But what we know is that infants have failure to thrive, if literally fail to thrive. If
Right,
they do not have that touch, if they do not have that relatedness, that connection. And, there's a really important longitudinal study from Harvard called the Harvard Study on Human Development. It started in, I think, about 1938 with a couple of hundred guys, because they were all guys that only got into Harvard at that time,
right,
including JFK. And they followed that cohort as well. They added in their children and now their spouses, as well as a group from an inner city Boston area. And
right,
what did they find? Connection, relationship, relationship, relationship. They thought life choices would tell you how well you lived, but when they looked at it, because there's nothing like it in the world, when they
right,
looked at it, what they saw was that connection builds safety, it
right,
builds health.
right.
And in
Yeah,
fact, loneliness kills. That's
yeah,
one of the big papers that came out.
yeah,
Loneliness kills. It's a
yeah,
higher risk factor than smoking and
yeah,
alcohol.
yeah, yeah.
We are
Awesome.
wired to
Yeah.
connect.
Yeah, and there's some really good stuff in the chat. Is this the same Harvard study on happiness? Also, my dad is asking or mentioning body language. Of course, I've never differential, a little partial. So here's the thing, everybody, this is critical. I'm going to tell the story about when Gina and I met. So for you clarity people, there's room for us, right? It's not whether one is right because we emphasize connection first. And sometimes some of the people I know, they're like, well, it's not that important. I'm not a hugger. And I say, well, we're all born huggers. What happens after that? So we're going to talk a little bit about this. But Gene, you're absolutely right. I think what I want to emphasize, the explanation, I want to make an exclamation, is that when humans as babies are not provided the emotional, social, physical connection, they fail to thrive. And they can even that could even lead to death. Not only a decrease in growth
Absolutely.
and a jeopardized limitation of their growth. So this is an important point, is that without human connection, we all fail to thrive. Now we're going to talk about not just from birth but beyond. And Gene, I know. So I want to just talk about my very first interaction with you. When I met Gene, folks, I can't tell the whole story, but one day we'll have the whole story. There's lots of funny parts, and I love her so much. She's like a sister to me. When I didn't know her, I met her the first time I went out. I flew to Ontario, and I met up with her in a restaurant for breakfast or for brunch. And I wasn't. It had been months. So I wasn't sure. I'm like, is she going to remember what I look like? And I saw her come in the restaurant, and it took her about 10 to 15 good minutes to just go around. She was like talking to all the families and the babies and stuff. And I thought, wow, she's really popular. And when she sat down at my table, I said, "What? Do you know all those people?" And she said, "No." And I was like, "Wow, that's that's pretty interesting. That's a lot of time invested." And this is what she said to me. She made sure that she stopped and looked in the eyes of the children, and she said, "I'm going to read it, so I get it right." She said, "Steve, smiling while looking into the eyes of a child activates, shapes, and strengthens their brain's architecture." And I was like, oh my goodness. Are you? And this was the beginning of my journey with Gene on understanding the brain and its impact on our immune system, on our well-being, on our resilience. Gene, can you it was the first time I learned about serve return. So I'd love to talk about your perspective of serve return and just the brain's architecture, if you can. I mean, that's a
Yeah,
small thing, but
yeah,
keeping it
no,
simple. But
sure.
I heard about this thing, serve return, which I think as adults, like we'll get to what's really hurting us in just a second. And I see people putting in the chat. I think they know what's going on with humans today, us as adults. But Gene, social connection, wired to
So
connect, and serve return. Yeah,
serve and return. So, Steve, in our relationship, we have had serve and return. I make a suggestion, or I explain to you why I'm looking and smiling at those beautiful bambinos. And that's a back and forth. That's a serve as well as a return. And what we know about the child's brain and the adult brain is that attention to serve and being responded to with a return absolutely builds your connection. When you've got the serve and return, you have connection, you have clarity, and then well, you know what? It's all right to tell this guy that joke I was wondering about, or it's all right to ask this guy, my friend Steve, to drop by because I'm a wreck right now. So serve and return, um,
yeah,
all about attachment, actually.
yeah, yeah,
But we don't need to go into that.
yeah, yeah,
But it's so crucially important. And
yeah,
when we think about parenting, oftentimes it's just control, control, control,
yeah.
rather than stopping and thinking about the whole child. You
Well,
know,
parenting,
Build
leadership,
leadership.
parenting, coaching, some teachers' classrooms, right? I think this is, I mean, we can make that connection. So you're saying the serve return. So what's interesting for me, Gene, is I think that serve return, we call it responsive, responsive communication, to be able to respond to the other, serve, smile, return, it comes back. But I think what's really cool, and I'd like you to comment on this. Serve return, folks, is one of the coolest things. And if you can look it up, it happens like within the first days, right? I mean, this is what's so cool about this is how our brains are wired. So even before there's any brain development yet, one of the coolest things is this thing called serve return, is that when the baby, you make a face at a baby, right? You get the baby's attention, and the baby can see your face, and you can make faces, round circles, squishy faces, and the baby will try to mimic, right? So what's really cool is this is the first time the core essentials are operating and being responded to. So connection comes first, it's required. Now, you clarity people, pay attention, right? Clarity and confirmation through intentional serve return. So it's clear that it's been received. So clarity is absolutely essential, following connection. The return gestures back and forth, we call responsive leadership. It's a form of, and this is what's so important, Gene. We've talked about this before. It's serve and return is not just a form of connection and communication. It's more importantly a form of protection. And I think what's critical here, it's the first time the child gets the message clearly, I see you, you're safe here.
You're safe
What are your
here.
th- what are your thoughts on that, Gene?
Oh my, well, I mean, yes, absolutely, Steve, that they serve in return. I love that you say, I'm seen here. I
Mm-hmm.
I am becoming fully well known here. But the basis, the hard work is I'm safe. If you don't
Yeah.
have safety, if you don't have that predictability, which we see through the attachment relationship in infants as well as in adult,
Oh, Gene froze there for a second.
I can show
So
you my
yeah,
warts and you
yeah.
still are there for me. So
Yeah.
it's super important. Super
Right.
important.
And we're going to get into the adult how this plays into adults. But Gene, I wanted to ask, um, what does connection and clarity? Because I think what's really important here, folks, is we are talking about children in the beginning, but we're going to move into adults and talk about the impact on the brain and on our overall well-being. But you already know this to be true. You know how you feel when you have a strong sense of connection. You know how you feel when you've got the clarity that you require. You know what it's like when you feel that sense of confidence or that assurance that you're going to be okay in the environments and the relationships that you're in. And you're the research. You know this already. And I think what's really critical here is that we've got to think about, are we connected in those environments that we are in, at work, at church, in school, in our homes? Do we have clarity? We'll get to that. But Gene, I want to know, what does connection and clarity have to do with brain development? And we can, if you want to, I don't, let me know when you want to interject the three parts of the brain there. A little bit of brain knowledge goes a long way. And we're going to get to some practical strategies for those that showed up for that. And also, I just want to, before you answer that, Gene, I want to let people know there's a Q&A function. There's the chat that everyone's using. Awesome. But if you have some specific questions that you want us to think about, throw them into the Q&A. You can push the Q&A button there and throw your questions in there. There's been a couple I've seen that I'm going to get to. One is, and so Gene, over to you. What does a connection, clarity, and a sense of control have to do with brain development?
So it's lovely. It's a lovely a tripartite, three-part kind of model that you're describing. So what we know about the brain is, like all mammals, we've got this area, the brain stem and the diencephalon, that's a very, very primitive. We've got it, and polar bears have it. But the next area of the brain is the limbic, the emotional system. And the brain develops from the bottom up and the inside out. So,
Right?
and then the last area to develop is the cortex, the prefrontal cortex, the thinking,
Yeah.
planning, the executive director. And what we know is that connection creates the pathways between my emotional brain, what the hell's going on, with connection. It is soothed by the prefrontal cortex and the hippocampus to say, this is a safe person. I'm okay here. And
Yeah.
I see this all the time in my consultation with kids with child welfare, because that sense of safety and connection and clarity is absent. And I see that in organizations
Yeah.
where the leadership, the guys or the person is coming in and they know the answer right at the start. But good leaders think about connection, clarity, and control and confidence, and think about, I'm going to know the answer at the end of the meeting
Right.
because of serve and return. And that
Right.
means you've quieted, when you go in like that, you've quieted the be on guard, fight, flight, freeze part of the brain, and you're
Yeah.
now thinking and processing
Yeah. Yeah.
your upper prefrontal cortex. I hope
Oh, I
that was
love it. Yeah,
complicated.
no, that was great. And I love what you said about the brain grows from the bottom to the top, from the inside out. And it actually requires three things. And one of the things I make clear in my book, Gene, is the brain first requires connection, then it
Yeah.
requires clarity, and it provides a sense of confidence and control. That's the prefrontal cortex, the front of the, you've heard flip the lid, right? I lost my head, right? A lot of those expressions are when we our top of our head flies off metaphorically because we get dysregulated. We become stressed. We become overwhelmed.
Mm.
We can't think straight. We can't eat. We can't sleep, right? And I think this is really, really critical. When we think about the absence of connection in our workplaces, when we think about our absence of connection in our homes or in our schools, when we think about the absence of clarity in the workplace or in our homes or in our schools, the places in our relationships, we can understand why we have that sense of helplessness. We can understand that our lack of confidence might be affected. And not only that, I think what you bring, Gene, is the evidence, right, from all the knowledge that you have and the research that you've read and that you've done and what you write about is that it undermines our growth, our development,
It
us
absolutely
from
does.
accessing our potential, right? So, yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
really, yeah, I love it. Go ahead,
yeah.
please.
Well, do you know what, Steve? I'm really prompted to say, what are screens doing to that sense of connection,
Mm,
that sense of clarity and control? What
yeah,
are there's a fabulous book called The Anxious Generation by John Haidt,
yeah,
Haidt. And
yeah,
he says that we've replaced a play-based childhood with a phone-based childhood. And that kids, this core essential that you outlined so clearly, Steve, in terms of connection, in terms of feeling safe and significant,
yeah,
is being eroded in our
right.
kids just now.
Yeah,
And, I would also say somebody has asked about how did Trump get in?
yeah,
I would say also in our adults that we seek, the brain does not like ambiguity. It wants to be certain. So if you've got somebody who's coming along and say, I've got the answers here, just
yeah,
come on,
yeah,
bang. I'm
yeah,
going,
yeah,
oh,
yeah,
you're talking to my primitive brain,
yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
going to ignore all of the things that I know about you as a crook, as a this, as a that. Anyway,
yeah,
we
yeah.
that
No, 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 no,
wandered a
no.
little bit.
No, this is great. The implications are staggering, and that's why simplifying it to the core essentials of connection, clarity, and a sense of control, we can start to get a handle on why we're feeling well in some environments and why we're not, right? And I think, as Jeff's saying, sometimes we'd rather have clarity than accuracy, right? Just tell me, just give me an answer. You've heard people say that, just give me an answer. I
Absolutely.
don't even care, right? And we get to that point, and this is really important. And I love the brain research on this, Gene, is that stress isn't a bad thing. And we talk about I'm
No.
trying to replace VUCA, by the way, folks. I'm on a mission to replace VUCA. I'm not a fan of VUCA as a term for many reasons. We can get into it another time. Thank you, military, for another wonderful acronym. But what we like to use is NUCD, which is new, unpredictable, complex, or disruptive, right? And we can be good through those. Stress isn't a bad thing, is it, Gene? Like, stress is what we
We
actually
need
need
it.
to grow, right? We need it.
Absolutely. We have
So yeah,
it needs to be predictable and controllable stress.
right. Predictable and controllable stress. So again, predictability in relationships, connection, clarity, and a sense of confidence. And here's the thing about we needed them then, and we need them still. And I think one of the things I want to move to is that our brains required connection, clarity, and control in the beginning, but we still need them now, especially through new, unpredictable, complex, and disruptive moments. And this is important when we are in an age of disruptiveness for many reasons, right? Divisiveness, extreme ideologies, right? Clarity is missing. We better have connection because if we lose both of them, then we create a sense of disequilibrium and stress that can be overwhelming, Gene.
Absolutely, that kind of abyss of uncertainty. But Steve, one of the things that's essential in what you're describing is the need from very early on. Like I just spoke to 1,400 early childhood educators and talked about reflection and learning how to think about your thinking. So when we're talking about clarity, we're not just saying, oh, I know I can predict what's about to happen, but we're also saying, I'm thinking about my thinking and I'm analyzing, I'm digging into it. And so
Yeah.
now I know, aha,
Yeah.
I've got it. So that reflective stance
Yeah. Yeah.
is essential. It's
Yeah.
essential for leaders in
Yeah.
business. You know, you've taught me that
Yeah.
as well. But it's
Yeah.
also essential for preschoolers.
Yeah, it is.
Also
And and
essential
and
for village
and that's the formula that we're getting at, Gene. Absolutely. We're getting at this formula for humans. And at the center of this model is the core essentials. And I can see in the chat, we've got some questions too we're going to get to. So folks, thanks for joining us. This is being recorded. I'm also going to show you where you can get Gene's book and where you can learn more about the book that we're talking about, the book that I wrote, I'm currently finishing, called Getting to Better. And we're here with Dr. Gene Clinton. So Gene, I wanted to one of the things that we're seeing, and everybody here knows this to be true, that when we're feeling connected, when we're feeling clear, and when we have a sense of control or confidence, we're doing our best. We are not calling in sick. We are not staying in bed all day, and not burnout is less likely in environments where we have the core essentials. Now, one of the things that we're hurting is because we're missing these, right? We look around the world, and I think one of the things that you and I agree upon, and I think people can put this in the chat, and we're going to get to some of the questions right away, is we have a connection crisis.
we do.
We have a human connection crisis more than ever. We have a clarity crisis, and I would mention that just a couple minutes ago in terms of fake news and the people not believing in research anymore, and really not the forecasting of what climate, business, like weather, right? And I think the other thing is we have a lack of control. We have a crisis. I think we have a crisis of confidence. Now, leaders, I'm going to speak to leaders here, right? The leaders that are on the line who wake up every day to succeed. We've got a job to get back to feeding and fueling and fulfilling these core essentials every day. Teachers are already doing it, right? And I think one of the things that we serve return is not only that, like we said, a form of connection, communicating clearly, it's a form of protection, right?
Mhm.
And Gene, what are your thoughts on this connection crisis or this clarity crisis or this confidence crisis that you think we're facing?
Well, I think there's some really great research on this. Like I think it's Shirley Turkle, Turkle, has looked at the conversational ability of people these days. And in
Yeah,
fact, people don't know how to start conversations. They don't know how to maintain conversations. They know how to send an emoji.
yeah, yeah,
They know how to send a reaction,
yeah, yeah,
but the essential
yeah,
human connection of serve and return, of back and forth, has
yeah,
been hugely damaged
yeah,
with
yeah,
the one with the, according to Haid, with the introduction of the
yeah,
social media and screens, but
yeah,
then we added COVID into it. So we've
yeah,
got a perfect storm
yeah,
of people um, are thinking that because I've got 100, 200, 300 friends on Facebook or TikTok,
yeah,
I've got so many followers, that is replacing, I've got a best buddy. I've got somebody that when I am down and out, I know who to call and they're going to be there for me. So we
yeah,
absolutely do have a connection crisis. And, we saw it so much in COVID in Quebec with all of
yeah,
the seniors who died.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And Gina, the chat is so amazing. There's some questions that we're going to get to. Um, you know, Before we get to the questions, I wanted to just say, one of the things we can do is we are feeling connected in areas. Like that's why the greatest space is places. Before we start looking at what we don't have and what we're missing, I think it's really important for everybody to find where do you feel connected,
Yeah.
right? Strengthen that. Where do you feel clarity? Strengthen that. Where are you feeling I did it this morning. Brenda Badgik's on the line. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Gene. One of the things we can do is thank each other more. So for connection, a couple things, because I want to get to, so there's some great questions for you, Gene, in the chat and or in the question. Making eye contact more. Like people, some people say there isn't a simple solution. There is actually.
Hmm.
See each other, have other people felt seen by us. Everyone's faces in their phones. I was at a company the other day, not one we're working with. Nobody was looking at each other, but I bet you everyone feels lonely, right? Smile more often, thank people more often, right? Ask people if they're comfortable, if they need anything, listen better, remember something
Hmm.
important about them, right? There's specific things we can do around clarity. Be as clear as possible on everything to the extent possible. Be consistent. When someone says, "Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to call her. I said I was going to call her before the end of the week. I'll get to her next week." You know what I say? Let's stop. I'm I'm good to just stop for 4 minutes. Someone's waiting for you, and with this lack of clarity and consistency is adding up and
Yeah.
eroding our sense of confidence, and it is really what I think is killing us. I really
Yeah.
do, Gene. What do
Yeah,
you think?
wait, yeah, absolutely. When you look at the data on prescriptions for anti-anxiety pills and depression
Right?
pills,
Yeah,
the is skyrocketing. The biological diseases like bipolar and schizophrenia, they're not going up. It's anxiety and depression and
yeah,
suicidal ideation.
yeah,
And a
yeah,
huge part of that is exactly what you're describing,
yeah,
Steve, that
yeah,
the brain requires relationship. It is the glue. It is
yeah,
the nutrient of the brain. And when we
yeah,
don't have that, when we don't
yeah,
have that, then our amygdala, our fight or flight center gets
yeah,
activated. We have a negativity bias, and what
yeah.
we see is what you blinked when I said that. That means you hate it.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah,
we don't have what you pointed out so clearly, the serve and return, the checking in. And I talk to judges about this, that when you rub your nose in court, some kids think that that's you saying F you because they
right.
do not have connection or clarity.
Yeah, yeah,
So anyway, so just
yeah,
the idea is that with repeated interaction comes predictability, comes a quieted brain, comes
yeah,
clarity, which
yeah.
then leads to control.
Yeah. And one of the things I wanted to mention, and because I want to get to the questions right now because people have asked
Okay,
them,
yep.
and we're going to try to move through them. There's quite a few. If we don't get to them, we're going to do our best to get to them at some point. And I wanted to say, though, Gene, we're not talking about it today, but, Brivia is determined in 2025 to demonstrate that values incongruences and values violations at work, at church, at home, in the community, when people are not living the values that they say they're supposed to live, is one of the things that's killing us. It's
Hmm.
morally distressing and it's morally injurious. And one of the things that gives values its power is that values are when known, understood, and honored, are actually one of the most powerful forces of connection,
Yeah.
clarity, and a sense of control. And I
Wow.
need people to hear this, that when you're in a company that says that respect is important or excellence is important or integrity is important, and you undermine those every day, you are making people sick. Now, I need to clarify that that often happens unintentionally, and we do what we can to be mirrors. But Gene, I wanted to know what you think about that from your perspective before we jump into the questions.
Well, Steve, what comes to my mind as you're talking about that is the fact that many people who think deeply about their values recognized, for example, that Trump did stuff that was against their values.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
he sang a song that said it's going to be different. So
yeah,
what
yeah,
we can predict very, very clearly is the erosion, the increased erosion of connection, clarity, and control. We're going to see
yeah,
increased erosion of the American culture, which unfortunately is going to affect us in Canada.
yeah,
But when
yeah,
you talk about leaders who you've got your values and then you don't follow them,
yeah,
the
yeah,
brain says, hey, hang on a second. This is not safe. If you said this, but you're acting this way, I
Oh,
don't feel safe. And if I don't
yeah,
feel safe, then my prefrontal cortex, my thinking, my smart brain, my executive director is not clicked on. And you're going to get reaction rather than thinking about
yeah,
what's
yeah,
going
yeah. And a couple of things, and I want to get to the questions right away. Is that people in the chat are talking about society. We are society. People say in health, oh, it's the system. We are the system. So
on. We are the
so
system.
everybody here, keep doing what you're doing. Get up tomorrow morning and or focus on today and thank people more. Focus on the people that are in your community. If everybody got up every day and did what they could to connect, to provide clarity and the right sense of connection and confidence, things will get back. We'll feel a tectonic shift. Things will get better faster. So I know we can talk about the system, we can talk about Trump, we can talk, but we got to look in the mirror and we got to ask ourselves, what am
We
I
are.
doing today to reinforce connection?
Absolutely.
What am I doing to reinforce or undermine clarity? And what am I doing as a leader, teacher, parent, or coach to reinforce a sense of confidence? And I know that
Yeah.
everybody here that's with us is trying that. So Jean, here's the I'm going to put up where people can get your book while we go through the questions because I think it's really important that people know where they can do. Here's the first question, Jean, and it's a great one. Is what are your thoughts? And so we'll try to give about a minute for each question here if we can, Jean. What
Uh-oh.
are your thoughts on how we leverage serve return with trans kids in provinces that restrict recognition of their gender identity? So what are our thoughts on
Oh,
that?
okay. Well, what my thoughts are on it is, if do we have a bleep function here? That what we know is that
What?
kids who are trans, who do not have acceptance by their family and the people around them, they die.
Yeah,
They frickin' die. And so we have to have support for that individual child and say, F you to the people
yeah,
that are not on board
yeah,
with kids. We are
yeah,
talking about a life-threatening situation. So we need to wrap around those
yeah,
kids as much
yeah.
as we possibly can.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Gene. That was a great answer. Thank you so much for the question. Here's another one. What I'm hearing for the workforce and supporting individuals at work, that clarity will be really the thing that individuals can control the most. However, I'm also hearing that connection is also important. How is the evolution of the hybrid and remote work environments impacting the development of adults and leaders when connectivity is not the same or as in person? How do we replicate the effectiveness of in person for those remote people? And this is something we deal with quite a bit: is do what you can, right? So knowing that is a starting point. Knowing that people may not feel connected, ask them for their ideas. There's some great things in the chat already. If you back up in the chat, there's some really good conversation about what people have done around putting their cameras on, around using phones sometimes instead of video. That's another thing. Getting back to the phone on one-on-one calls can be more intimate. Having gatherings, right? So ask your team, how can we be more
Yep.
connected? How can we feel more connected? Where are we already feeling connected? Where can we get clearer? Now, I'm going to be clear. Here's a really simple one. Have an agenda and also be clear about what the meeting's about. So many of us are halfway through a meeting and someone texts me and says, "What's this meeting about?" No clarity. Gene, anything
Yeah.
to add to that one, or do you want me to go on
Oh,
to the
you know
next
what,
question?
Steve, what I want to underscore about what you've said is have gatherings. You
Yeah,
know, so when as a leader, when as an organization, you recognize that your people are your power. Your people
right.
are your power. Then you
Yeah,
say, we are going to make a priority of good. We've got all of our distances, but let's have these gatherings on a regular kind of basis,
yeah,
not
yeah,
necessarily with the agenda, but
yeah,
an intentionality to say, people are our power. So we really need to
yeah.
nurture those relationships.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Gene. And by the way, everyone, this is where you can get Gene's book. It's an amazing book. Love Builds Brains. I recommend it for everybody who has children on their street, even in their lives. Jillian asked a
So
good question. How do we connect with how do we connect resources to vulnerable populations, thinking so much about the homelessness situation so that they have or can develop all of the core essentials? As Gene was saying, it comes back to community. Yes, we can leverage formal resources, but we've got to build relationships. We have to build our informal networks as well. So we have to do what we can to connect them to informal resources, family, friends, community, and formal resources to the extent possible, knowing that the core essentials are critical. Jean, anything to add to that?
Well, no, I love what you said, Steve. I would also add that there's a song, There But for Fortune, Go You or I,
Right,
knowing what the strengths of the people who are housing challenged,
right.
spending the time
Yeah,
getting to know, well, do you know what? It turns out that you used to be a physics teacher. It turns out that you used to be, so focusing, as you've taught me, on the values, needs, goals, and strengths is
right. The core
so
four. Yeah.
hugely
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. And people, if you're interested in learning more about the three great states, the core essential, the core four, the key connectors, this is where you can learn more about the book. You can sign up to find more. We're going to do more presentations in the new year. I'm excited about this. A couple more questions, Gene. I want to jump to this one here. What should you do if your leadership creates an environment of dysfunction that causes you and your team to constantly be dysregulated, stressed, sick, or anxious? First of all, my condolences if you're in an environment like that. And it's webinars like this and research and information that we can at least have people understand the implications of this. The other thing too, what shareholders are seeing, like yeah, I'd love that they would respect the health and well-being of their employees, but sometimes knowing that they're going to be more productive, less sick time, less turnover is enough for them to be interested. We know that people who are overly negative, people who are controlling, people who are mean, people who live in values violating ways where they operate against values and character make us sick. If you're in an environment like that, I would say find allies. Try to leverage HR. Try to connect with other people. However, I'm going to turn it over to Gene. I do tell people every week, you have to ask yourself, how is this serving me? And I know we don't all have the privilege of leaving our jobs because it puts food on the table and gets our kids to hockey. But what we need to do is we really need to make health and well-being and finding and fulfilling the core essentials at work an absolute priority. Gene, over to you.
Absolutely.
Any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, Steve. So I have family who are in the teaching profession, and sometimes the leadership sucks big time. And so you can get lost in trying to change the things that you have no control over,
Right.
or you can focus on the things that you can control. You can
Yeah.
focus on the fact that if I, before I go into an encounter, if
Yeah.
I focus on the moment and focus on my breathing and
Yeah.
say, this is the moment, it's the only moment I have, then
Yeah.
it makes a huge difference. What is it doing? It's making huge connection of you yourself to your own self and body,
Yeah.
which is creating, that mind-body connection, which we,
Yeah. And
have a whole
yeah.
other webinar on.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're describing regulation, which is in the Getting to Better book, and
Absolutely.
it's also in yours, right? And
Yeah,
about how can we get regulated and connection, clarity, and control. Like the important thing about these three core essentials is that not only did we need them at birth, we need them beyond this. We need them today. We need each other as well, because our relationships are sources of co-regulation. Our resources help us co-regulate, right? That sense of confidence helps keep us grounded in meetings where it's negativity, right? And this is absolutely critical, that the core essentials are key to our resilience. Now, Gene, we have one more question, and it's a great question for Michael. Michael often comes here in the webinars, and if people are dropping off, thank you for joining us. We had a couple minutes left. Do stay in touch. Do people predominantly have tendencies to be more connection, clarity, or control, or does it change due to the context? Now, we did get to this a little bit, right? We need all three, Michael. Great question. In certain moments, like our good friend Michael Unger, one of the greatest researchers on resilience, will say, like, if your relationship bucket is full, you probably don't need connection, right? You may need clarity more, or you may need something else. So we do have preferences. We talked earlier, but I'm a connection person. Like that's where I live and start every day. However, if I'm in new, unpredictable, or complex situations, I may need more clarity, right, to be able to navigate that. right? And we talked a little bit about that. Jean, any thoughts on that? The leaning to one or the other, needing all three
Yeah,
from your
yeah.
perspective?
Well, I agree completely with what you're saying, Steve. I think we always have to remember that safety, that being safe emotionally, psychologically, physically, spiritually, is so crucial that if you don't have that sense of safety, then you ain't going to take the risk of trying to make connection. You first need to build that sense of safety, souse it out, see what's what. And then once you have more clarity, boom, you can
Yeah,
go back to connection, and
yeah,
then you've got clarity, and then you move forward
yeah.
with
Awesome.
confidence.
I love it. I love it. And Jean, thank you so much. Now, folks, there's so many good things in the chat. It is 12:30, bottom of the hour. What a fast hour. Jean Clinton,
Oh,
I love you so much. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I want to thank Brenda Baduke, who has just been incredible uh, team member at Brivia. I see some great friends and partners here. Jean, I'm glad that I got to introduce you to some of my folks. I hope some of your folks enjoyed the conversation. Any last words, Jean, before we go back into our respective universes today?
well, I think, Steve, that these kind of conversations and the joining together of minds, as the chat and the questions have done, are essential for us to deal with this crisisitis.
Right.
We need connection. We need to be thinking and be reflective, and we need to do it in a declaration of interdependence, of Ubuntu,
Yes.
rather
Of
than
Ubuntu.
yeah,
Wow.
rather than this individualism that is wreaking havoc.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I want to say, I agree. Our potential is inextricably linked, and my potential is linked to yours. There is no I in the core essentials. And I just want to thank everybody for being here. And I want everybody to keep doing what they're doing, is keep connecting, keep providing clarity so that we can be confident and have that sense of control we need to feel better and do better in the environments that we spend the most time in. So, Jean, thank you very much and have a wonderful day. I'm jumping in another meeting, so I'll debrief with you later. Thank you, Brenda.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Wondrous. Thank
Take care,
you. Thank you
everybody.
all. Bye bye.
Bye.